Welcome to Pillowtime lore, my dear ones. Have you noticed how sometimes the day feels heavy, like it's carrying 100 tiny worries that follow you everywhere? Tonight, let's set them down together, right here, where the world is quiet and the night stretches softly around us. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the gentle sway of a rocking chair, the soft rustle of curtains in a midnight breeze, the hush of a room that feels like it has been waiting just for you. Do you remember how stories once felt as a child? How a single sentence could paint the sky in colors you had never seen, or make the shadows dance as if they were alive? That magic has never left you, my dear. It simply waits for a calm night and a listening heart. Here at Pillowtime Lore, every story is a lantern, lighting a path to a place where laughter, wonder, and comfort meet, where dreams wander freely, and where your soul can rest without fear. So, tell me, do you want to wander through enchanted forests, sail across starlit seas, or simply float on clouds of gentle words tonight? Whatever it is yours. Wrap yourself in your blankets, take a slow, deep breath, and let the world soften around you. Welcome to Pillowtime Lore, where each night becomes a gentle journey, and every story feels like it was whispered just for you. Come closer, my dears, and settle in, for I have a tale to share, a story full of tiny wonders, secret magic, and brave hearts. It begins in a small village just beyond the royal city, where the streets smell of fresh bread and the wind carries whispers of dreams. There lived a young girl named Liora. No ordinary girl, for she carried magic in her hands. Not the kind that comes from spells or royal decrees, but the kind that blooms from imagination, patience, and a heart full of love. She spent her nights in a quiet attic, crafting tiny mechanical animals, little birds that fluttered and mice that scurried as if alive, creations born from her dreams and her clever hands. And though her home was filled with chaos, laughter, and bickering from her stepsisters, and a stepmother who never understood her, Liora's heart remained gentle, filled with hope and quiet courage. Now, listen closely, for this is the night when the kingdom buzzed with excitement, when the king announced a grand royal ball unlike any before, a ball not for beauty or wealth, but for talent and imagination. And Liora's world, usually small and hidden, began to stretch wide with possibility. There would be stolen inventions, tiny magical creatures coming to life, clever tricks, and a prince who was looking for something far greater than crowns or jewels. He was searching for a spark of true brilliance, a mind and heart unlike any other. And it would be Liora, with her cleverness and kindness, who would change the course of the evening, though she could never have guessed the adventures and surprises that awaited her. So, pull your blankets close, my little ones, and let your imagination wake. For every tick of a tiny clock and every flutter of a mechanical bird holds a secret waiting to be discovered. This is the story of the night that Prince chose, a story of courage, kindness, and creativity. A story that whispers that even the smallest heart can leave the biggest mark on the world. And by the time it is done, you may find yourself believing that magic is real, that dreams are worth protecting, and that the world always has room for those who dare to shine. Liora lived in a little village not far from the royal city. where the streets were lined with cobblestones and the air always smelled of fresh bread and morning dew. She lived with her stepmother and two stepsisters, Marva and Alina, who were loud and hasty and thought the world owed them everything. Liora's father had been a skilled clockmaker, known across the village for making clocks that ticked perfectly and little toys that moved as if by magic. After he passed away, the little house felt emptier and colder, but Liora held on to his memories like a warm shawl around her shoulders. She inherited his love for creating things, not for fame or riches, but because she believed that even the smallest invention could carry a piece of the heart every night. When the house grew quiet, except for the occasional creak of the floorboards or the whisper of the wind, Liora would climb up to the attic, a dusty little room full of forgotten memories. There she would open her tiny wooden chest, pull out gears, springs, and bits of polished glass, and begin to tinker. She made miniature animals, birds that flapped their wings, and mice that scurried in tiny circles. And sometimes she imagined them talking to her, sharing secrets only she could hear. It made her feel alive. It made the world feel bigger and brighter than the chores and scolding below ever could. Her stepmother, a stern woman with eyes like sharp knives, called these inventions useless toys. She would scold Liora and send her to scrub the floors, wash the endless dishes, or iron the mountain of clothes her stepsisters left in messy piles. Marva and Alina, with their greedy little grins, would snatch trinkets from the market and pretend they had made them. And yet, Liora never complained. She knew kindness was stronger than anger. She knew that one day her creations would tell a story of their own. If only someone would see them as she worked under the flickering light of a lantern. Liora dreamed quietly of a life where her creativity mattered, where someone would look at her inventions and smile, where her small hands could build worlds and not just dust and dishes. She whispered to herself that the heart's spark cannot be hidden forever, and maybe, just maybe, magic lived not in castles or crowns, but in the hands of those who dared to create. As she wound a tiny spring and watched a little bird lift into the air, she felt a thrill of hope, a whisper that perhaps tomorrow would bring something unexpected. The morning sun peeked through the little curtains of Liora's home, painting the walls with golden stripes, and already the household was alive with chaos. Marva and Alina were arguing over who should wear the prettiest ribbons, who should get the largest piece of bread, and who could sit closest to the hearth. Their voices clashed like cymbals, and every tiny disagreement seemed to grow into a storm. Liora moved quietly between them, stepping carefully over fallen shoes and spilled flour, gathering broken trinkets and lost buttons, fixing what they had carelessly ruined. She never spoke up. She had learned long ago that patience was sometimes louder than shouting, that the gentle hands could calm more than angry voices ever could. By midday, the market was bustling with villagers, carts piled high with apples and fresh bread. The air smelled of herbs and roasting chestnuts, and Marva and Alina strutted as if they owned the place, showing off their ribbons and necklaces they had bought with borrowed coins. The townspeople chuckled behind their backs at the sisters' arrogance, their pride puffing up like balloons ready to burst. But when their eyes fell on Liora, quietly helping an elderly man with a heavy basket, or tying a loose wheel on a cart, there was admiration in their smiles. For her, gentleness spoke louder than any jewel. Her kindness was a quiet melody that the heart could recognize even among noises. Liora wandered near the trash heaps behind the market. She noticed a small piece of broken clockwork, tarnished and forgotten, a tiny gear with delicate teeth and a spring barely holding its curl, and a spark lit in her eyes. She picked it up carefully, imagining what it could become. She could almost see a tiny bird flapping its wings, or a mouse scurrying in perfect rhythm. The possibilities danced in her mind, reminding her that even what seems lost or broken could become something magical if treated with love and care. She whispered to herself that the heart can mend more than just objects. It can mend dreams and hope too. By evening, Liora returned home with her treasure hidden safely in her pocket, the household still humming with noise, the sisters complaining about nothing and everything, the stepmother scolding as usual. But Liora carried a small warmth inside, a secret inspiration, a quiet excitement that perhaps today had planted the seed of something wonderful. And in that moment, she realized that even in a house full of chaos, small sparks of creativity could light the darkest corners. She smiled softly as she climbed to her attic, ready to breathe life into the broken piece, and the night seemed to whisper back, promising adventure. The kingdom was alive with excitement, the streets filled with merchants shouting their wares, and children chasing each other, flags fluttering from the towers, and the smell of fresh pastries drifting from every corner. Word had spread that the king was hosting a grand royal ball. But this time, it was unlike any before. The invitations were to be given only to those who possessed a remarkable talent, not beauty, not riches, but a gift that could inspire the heart and mind. The people whispered with curiosity, wondering who in the kingdom might be worthy, and even in her small room, Liora's heart thumped with a quiet hope, imagining the possibilities. The prince, a young man tired of shallow smiles and hollow compliments, wanted to meet someone who could touch his heart with something real, someone whose spirit shone brighter than gold and silk. He hoped to find a companion who could see the world differently, who could create, imagine, and dream. The very thought made Liora's chest warm, for she had always believed that the smallest creation, made with care, could carry more truth than the grandest palace ever could. She closed her eyes and imagined her little mechanical birds dancing across the ballroom, whispering secrets of invention to the amazed guests. Her stepmother, hearing the news, clapped her hands with delight, seeing this as the perfect opportunity for her daughters, Marva and Alina, to catch the prince's eye and perhaps win a life of luxury. She fussed over their gowns and ribbons, forgetting nothing. Yet, when she turned to leave, she laughed, sharp and dismissive, saying that she could never hope to attend such a grand event. Her dreams were too foolish, her little inventions useless. She forbade Liora from even thinking about it, sending her back to scrub the floors and mend torn hymns. Yet the laughter bounced off the walls like a challenge, and Liora's eyes sparkled with quiet defiance. For sometimes the heart's whisper is louder than any command. As Liora sat by the window that evening, watching the sun melt behind the rooftops and painting the village in gold and rose, she let her mind wander to her attic, to the little gears and springs waiting to be brought to life. She reminded herself that even if no one saw her talent, she could still create, and creation was its own kind of magic. A magic that did not need permission or applause. She whispered to herself that courage is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet choice to hope and build. And with that thought, she felt a thrill, a secret promise that perhaps this ball would change everything, and the night seemed to lean closer, listening. Marva and Alina were in a panic, their laughter and chatter replaced by anxious whispers as they realized that neither of them had any real talent to impress at the royal ball. They paced the house, pulling ribbons from their hair and smoothing out dresses as if that could magically give them skill, their minds racing faster than their feet. And then, in a moment of desperation, their eyes fell on Liora, quietly humming to herself in the corner, tinkering with her little creations, her hands moving deftly over tiny gears and springs, and a wicked idea sparked between them. They would take what they could and pretend it was theirs, because who would notice the small, delicate magic hidden in the attic? Under the cloak of darkness and the soft glow of the moon through the window, the sisters crept upstairs, and their hands, greedy and trembling, grabbed Leora's unfinished pieces, the delicate mechanical birds and scurrying mice, thinking the work would speak for them, never realizing that talent cannot truly be stolen. They tiptoed back to their rooms, hearts pounding with the thrill of trickery, unaware that even the smallest actions can ripple far beyond their understanding, leaving trails of consequences that whisper louder than any praise. The next morning, Liora discovered the theft, her chest tightening with sorrow and disbelief. The pieces she had nurtured like tiny seedlings were gone. Yet she did not shout, she did not cry out. She simply closed her eyes and let a quiet resolve fill her heart. She whispered to herself that true creation comes from the heart, and no one could take that from her. Sometimes loss is a spark for greater things, and perhaps the best invention is born when the soul refuses to surrender. She felt a warmth rising, a determination to craft something even more spectacular than before, a work that could not be ignored or copied. That night, as she climbed to her attic and gathered the remaining pieces, she noticed something she had never seen. Her tiny mechanical animals moved on their own. Little birds flapping their wings in delicate arcs and mice scurrying in playful loops. Their movements smooth and graceful, as if they had a life of their own, and a thrill ran through Leora's heart. She realized that magic, the kind that comes from care and imagination, was real, and it was alive in the creations she had poured herself into. She whispered softly to them, thanking them for being there, for reminding her that the world is bigger and brighter for those who dare to believe. And in that attic, under the moonlight, a quiet adventure was beginning. The night of the royal ball drew near, and the moon hung low in the sky like a silver lantern, casting gentle light over the village. Liora climbed to her attic with a mixture of excitement and nervousness, her hands trembling slightly as she gathered her gears, springs, and polished glass pieces. The room smelled of warm wood and oil, and for a moment she paused, letting her eyes wander over the tiny creations she had nurtured. She whispered to herself that sometimes the greatest courage is to keep going even when the heart is weary, even when the world seems too big for a small girl with small hands. She worked tirelessly, sewing, assembling, and tinkering, her fingers moving as if guided by invisible hands. But as the hours passed, Her eyelids grew heavy and doubt crept in. She almost gave up, thinking perhaps she was not worthy of the ball. Perhaps her little inventions would never matter. But then something wonderful happened. The tiny mechanical animals stirred, their eyes glimmering, their wings and paws moving as if they had a heartbeat. They flew and scurried around her, gathering bits of glass and threads, helping to stitch her gown into a shimmering masterpiece that sparkled like starlight caught in silk. It was as if the magic of belief itself had awakened, responding to her hope and persistence. Liora's breath caught with awe as she watched her creations work together, a tiny orchestra of gears and wonder, and with careful hands, she crafted a necklace, the final touch, a mechanical bird that flapped its delicate wings and glowed faintly, a symbol of all her dreams and courage. She whispered to it softly, saying that even small hearts can hold great magic, that patience and care are stronger than fear or despair. And the bird chirped in a mechanical melody, as if understanding her words, just before she stepped toward the door. Ready to face the grand world outside, the creatures whispered a warning, their tiny voices like a breeze through the attic, reminding her that the magic would only last until midnight. Then everything would return to normal, the gown, the sparkle, the bird, all of it temporary, and Liora nodded, understanding that beauty and wonder are most precious when they are fleeting. That courage often shines brightest in the moment before change. And with a deep breath, she stepped into the night, carrying her heart full of hope and her inventions alive with quiet magic, ready for whatever awaited her at the ball. The palace shimmered like a jewel under the moonlight, golden chandeliers swinging gently, casting dancing shadows on marble floors. Guests arrived in gowns and coats that glittered, each one eager to impress. Singers practiced soft notes in corners. Painters added last strokes to their canvases, and inventors tinkered with tiny machines that whirred and clicked, all hoping to catch the prince's eye. Yet beneath the sparkle and grandeur, the air was thick with whispers and curiosity. For the people had never seen a ball that celebrated talent over beauty or wealth, and a quiet anticipation hummed through the halls. Like a secret waiting to be revealed, Marva and Alina tried to appear confident, lifting Liora's stolen inventions with trembling hands, smiling too wide, their hearts thudding with anxiety. But as soon as the mechanical birds and mice began to move, they faltered, wings dropping and tiny wheels jamming. The trinkets refused to obey them, and laughter bubbled quietly among the crowd. Marva and Alina's faces turned red with shame, while Liora, standing just beyond the doors, watched quietly, her heart fluttering like the wings of her own tiny creations. She whispered to herself that truth and talent cannot be stolen, that the heart always knows who belongs to a gift, and that the bravest magic is honesty. Then, with a quiet courage, Liora stepped into the ballroom, her gown shimmering with light woven from threads of glass and clockwork. Every movement graceful yet alive, her tiny inventions danced around her, reflecting moonlight and candle glow. And she lifted her mechanical bird, setting it free. The little creature soared across the grand room, chirping a melody that felt like laughter and wind and wonder all at once. And a gasp ran through the guests, soft and awful. For never had they seen anything so delicate, so alive, so full of joy. The prince's eyes found hers, wide and bright, and he felt a pull he could not explain. It was not beauty alone that drew him, but the spark of imagination, the quiet intelligence, the bravery of a girl unafraid to show who she truly was. He whispered to himself that sometimes the rarest treasures are found not in gold or velvet, but in hearts that dare to create and shine. And in that moment, surrounded by music, shimmer, and tiny magical wings, Liora's world felt as if it had opened wide, promising wonders yet to come. The music swirled through the ballroom like a river of silver, winding between golden chandeliers and polished marble. And the prince approached Liora with a quiet smile, inviting her to dance, but as their hands met, it felt less like a courtly ceremony and more like two minds meeting in a world of ideas. They spoke softly about inventions, about the little things that make life magical, about how a single gear or a tiny bird could change the way people saw the world. Liora's eyes sparkled with excitement as she shared her dreams, and the prince listened, not just hearing, but understanding. For sometimes the rarest connection is found in shared curiosity rather than spoken promises. As they moved together in gentle rhythm, the stepsisters fumed from a distance, their faces twisted with jealousy. They tried to interrupt with haughty bows and clumsy jokes, but each attempt only revealed their own insecurity. Buttons popped and ribbons slipped, and the crowd's attention returned immediately to Liora and her creations, who twirled and flitted around her like sparks of starlight. She whispered to herself that envy is a heavy chain, one that only binds the heart of those who forget that brilliance cannot be borrowed. And in that thought, her courage grew stronger, her smile brighter, for she had never felt so truly seen. The prince leaned closer, sharing his own hopes for the kingdom, imagining a future where creativity and kindness mattered more than titles or wealth. And Liora felt a thrill, a quiet warmth, knowing that for the first time, someone could see not just what she had made, but who she was, a girl with a heart full of ideas, tiny wings of imagination, and a stubborn hope that the world could be better if people believed in the little things that mattered most. Then, suddenly, a deep chime rolled through the palace, echoing like distant thunder, and Liora's heart skipped. She looked at the grand clock and realized it was nearly midnight. The magic she had come to rely on began to tremble at the edges of her gown, and fear pricked at her chest. She whispered that sometimes courage means knowing when to run, when to trust the unknown, and without a word, she fled, leaving behind the shimmering gown, the dancing lights, and the prince staring in confusion, the little mechanical bird fluttering in her wake. And in that moment, the ballroom felt emptier. The night stretched longer, and a secret promise lingered in the air that this was not the end, but the beginning of something extraordinary. Liora ran through the quiet streets, her gown still shimmering faintly, but losing its glow with every hurried step. The wind tugged at her hair, and the little mechanical birds fluttered around her shoulders, fading like fireflies at dawn. Her chest heaved with both excitement and fear. She whispered to herself that sometimes the bravest hearts must move quickly, even when the world is watching, even when magic feels fragile. And in that moment, the city felt larger and lonelier than ever, yet full of possibility, hidden in shadows and moonlight. In her haste, her fingers fumbled, and the very first invention she had ever made. A tiny mechanical bird slipped from her grasp, clinking softly against the cobblestones before it stopped moving. She did not notice it fall. She only felt the pull of home, of safety, and the whisper of her heart, telling her that sometimes you must leave behind what you love to find where you belong. And the bird, delicate and intricate, waited silently for someone who could understand its creator, a secret marker of hope that even distance cannot erase. The prince, wandering the ballroom the next day, discovered the little bird, its wings still quivering faintly with mechanical life. And he knew in his heart that he must find the girl who had created such a masterpiece. He whispered that true talent leaves a trace that no trickery or disguise can erase. And he vowed that he would search the kingdom not for appearances or promises, but for the mind and heart that had made something so alive, so delicate, and so full of wonder. Meanwhile, back at home, Liora climbed silently to her attic, her favorite refuge, and sat among her remaining inventions, feeling a mixture of loss and relief. She told herself that dreams are sometimes like fragile wings, needing care and patience to lift them. And though tonight had ended too soon, her courage was still alive, pulsing quietly in the quiet of the room, like the tiny ticking of a hidden clock. Marva and Alina returned later, faces red with frustration and fury, blaming Liora for their humiliation at the ball, tossing words sharp enough to sting while their mother paced and plotted, thinking of ways to keep Liora hidden and small forever. Yet Liora only smiled softly, whispering that the heart cannot be caged, that creativity finds its way even through walls and locks, and that magic, though it fades, leaves a trail that no darkness can erase. And in that quiet attic, the first seeds of a new adventure were already stirring, waiting for the right moment to bloom. The morning sun spilled gold across the kingdom, and the prince mounted his horse, holding the tiny mechanical bird carefully in his hands. He announced to all that he would visit every house, not to find a shoe or a ribbon, but the girl who had crafted something alive and beautiful. The people whispered with curiosity and excitement, some dreaming of recognition, some hoping to see the magical creation. And in every home there was a flutter of anticipation, for a talent that cannot be faked draws truth like a candle draws moths. And the prince rode through the streets with quiet determination, knowing that a heart full of creativity is rarer than any jewel. Marva and Alina tried desperately to claim the invention as their own, each showing off little trinkets and broken gears. But the mechanical bird would not respond. Its wings remained still, its tiny eyes dim, and the sisters' faces fell, hot with embarrassment and frustration. They shouted and demanded, blaming Liora silently. Yet they could not imitate the love and care she had poured into her creations. And the prince only smiled softly, knowing that talent born of patience and kindness cannot be stolen, that the soul of an artist speaks even through silence. When the prince arrived at Liora's home, her stepmother panicked and locked her in the attic, hoping to hide the girl and preserve her own daughter's chance. But Liora's tiny inventions were waiting, their little gears clicking, wings fluttering, and they nudged open the latch, guiding her down the stairs with gentle persistence. She slipped quietly into the sunlight, heart pounding, whispering that sometimes courage needs friends, even the smallest and most unexpected ones, to break through fear and walls alike. At last, she stood before the prince, her hands trembling with both excitement and relief, and she showed him her workshop, a room full of tiny wonders, birds flapping, mice scurrying, little wheels turning, all alive with magic and care. She explained her dreams, how she hoped to make the world brighter with her inventions, how she believed that creativity and kindness could change everything. The prince listened, eyes wide with awe, and whispered that the world is made richer, not by crowns or titles, but by hearts that dare to build, imagine, and share. And in that moment, the kingdom felt a little smaller, gentler, as if magic had returned where it belonged. The palace gates opened wide, letting in the morning sun that spilled over marble floors and golden walls. And the prince led Liora through halls filled with curious courtiers, each step echoing softly like a promise. He spoke not of riches or titles, but of her brilliance, her creativity, and her heart, inviting her to become the royal inventor, to fill the kingdom with the kind of magic that comes not from spells or gold, but from imagination, patience, and love. And Liora's chest swelled with a quiet joy, for at last someone had seen her for who she truly was, beyond the chores, beyond the whispers, beyond the shadows of doubt. Marva and Alina, standing awkwardly nearby, bowed their heads in shame, their faces pale as they realized the emptiness of their schemes. They whispered apologies, not just for taking her inventions, but for underestimating the quiet strength of a kind heart. And Liora smiled softly, remembering the words she had often whispered in the attic, that courage and kindness are stronger than anger or envy. She forgave them gently and offered to teach them the basics of crafting, saying that even the smallest hands can create wonders if they are willing to try. And as they took their first careful steps with tools and tiny gears, their faces lit with surprise and delight, a spark of understanding blossoming where jealousy once dwelled. Then the palace doors opened to the grand courtyard, and Liora unveiled her workshop, a room alive with tiny mechanical animals, fluttering birds and scurrying mice, all gleaming with the soft glow of her care and magic. The kingdom gasped, not at jewels or grandeur, but at the beauty of imagination brought to life. And the prince whispered that sometimes the rarest treasures are not found in palaces, but in hearts that refuse to settle for less than wonder. And the crowd murmured their agreement. Children wide-eyed and elders nodding with gentle smiles. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Liora stepped forward, her eyes glimmering with pride and hope, and whispered to the kingdom that creativity is a gift meant to be shared, that even the smallest heart can leave the largest mark. And with that, the palace seemed to hum with possibility, every little invention dancing in celebration. And for the first time, Liora felt entirely free, entirely alive, knowing that the world would always have room for those who dare to dream, to build, and to shine. And in that moment, the kingdom did not just witness magic, it believed in it.